going to talk about now about staying in your house. This is the modular that we're going to discuss. You know, this is a very important part of why I put this course together. My parents grew up on a farm and they farmed their entire lives, and that's all they knew. In fact, my dad was, his parents were restoring their old shanty or their old house, the homestead that they had, and so they had moved into a little garage, or actually it was called a grain bin. It was empty, obviously, at the time. There wasn't grain in it. But, you know, they put up a little stove and a bed, and so they were living in that while they were refurbishing and working on their main house. Well, my dad happened to be born at that time, which a little interesting tidbit about that is my dad never had a birth certificate. Back then, he was born at home, and it wasn't until in the 70s, my brother was over in Germany with the U.S. Army, and so my mom wanted to go over there because of the genealogy. She was studying and putting together a family history book, so she wanted to go over there, so she made it happen that we were going to go to Germany. My dad, my mom, and I, because all my other siblings had moved out. With that, we had to get a passport. My dad did not have a birth certificate, so luckily he had an aunt who was in her 80s that could verify that he was born, and also with that he had a baptismal certificate. And that actually was a little bit burnt. I don't know, the story on that, but it was, I just remember seeing it and had some burnt edges on it. But it was a birth certificate that was notarized and real and authentic. And then having his aunt verify with him, he was able to get, and I don't know, I was pretty young at the time, so I don't know if he actually got a birth certificate, but I do know that it allowed him to get a passport. So that was something that was kind of interesting. But with that, he grew up, and so he was born in that little grain bin. And then when he and mom got married, they actually used part of that grain bin to build onto their house. And so when they started out, they moved into this grain bin and moved it down down the hill. And so that's where they started out. So, Dad used to sit at the coffee table in the kitchen and say, nope, didn't go very far, and he'd point to the attic in the living room because that was the grain bin. He goes, I was born right up there, so my dad didn't go very far, and they did not want to go into a nursing home. They wanted to stay out on the farm and be a part of the farm as long as possible. So when I moved back 10 years ago, we had talked about them moving up to my place because I was about 10 miles away. And so, we had talked, our house was rather large, and the girls were moving out. So, we always said, if you needed to, move in with us, that we were okay with that. That was a conversation that we had. And then, they did come into a little bit of money, and mom said, I would just feel more comfortable, living in my own space, but, we need more help. What if we got a modular and moved into that? And so they were able to buy a new modular, and we put in the septic and the water and everything. And so they had their own space, and, it worked out great. They loved it, and that, made my mom happy because we were there at her beck and call when she needed it. And, if she had to go to the doctor's appointments, she was right there, or we were right here. When there was distress, they had the like I said, they were able to, call on us. So, but unfortunately, they didn't make that message clear enough to my siblings, because I don't know if greed or, ugliness, jealousy, I don't know what it was, but they were determined to get them into the nursing home. In fact, before they moved up here, they actually moved into the assisted living for a couple of years, which was good in the beginning, because they were still able to do. But as my dad started to get Alzheimer's and dementia, we would have to stop in the morning and get them dressed, and then stop in at night and get them ready for bed. And you know, all of us did that. I did it, my husband did it. We have 5 daughters. Several of them, the ones that were around, they helped do it too. So we all cared for them. But like I said, it was starting to get more complicated. And then, you know, that's when we decided that, you know, Mom wanted to move out here so that we could help her more. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, this page is called Staying in Your Home, and or Stay in Your House. And so we're going to talk about this now, so that if this is something that you want, if you know, my husband sold long-term care insurance, and with that there were they sold directly to farmers, and that was kind of a unique niche that they were in, because when you think about it, a farmer does not want to move off of his place. You know, they're one of the last ones that are going to go into a nursing home, because you know, they just don't want to do that. They love their land, they love their farm, versus somebody that's always lived in a apartment building, or, you know, downtown in a duplex and whatnot. It's that transition to go into a nursing home is a lot easier for them than like a farmer or somebody in the rural area. But either way, you know, whatever your desire is, if this is something that you want to do, this is what we're going to cover right now. And the reason that we're covering it right now, because as you make home improvements, start thinking with the end in mind. And you know, we're going to talk about handrails and whatnot, but that's why we're discussing this now, so that you can prepare for what you're going to need, you know, later on in life, and make it easier for you to transition and stay in your home. So so you want to stay in your house as long as you can. Now is the time to start making arrangements, so you can ensure you are set up for assisted living and truly enjoy your golden years in your own home. Let's take a look at something to do, or some of the things that you can do now to start preparing for the modifications. One thing is the wheelchair and the walker accessibility. You know, with that, if you're putting in new stairs or steps or anything like that, think about what you can do to start adding ramps to them, and you know, make sure that that's something. That was one of the things we did, a little wraparound porch, and it had wheelchair accessible. It was a ramp instead of the stairs going up to Mom and Dad's little modular. And, you know, I mean, they loved it because we could wheel them out. And with them too, we used the French doors for them a lot, mainly my dad, and then later on for my mom. But because he was in a wheelchair, it was easier to do those French doors. So, you know, something to think about. Actually, they just had the sliding glass door. But, you know, be thinking of that. And also, you know, putting your ramp up. You know, even though you might not want to put a ramp out now, but just kind of look at your landscape and, you know, how can you do that, and how can that transition if that's something that you do need. Safety bars in the bathrooms and possibly in the bedrooms. This is really important, because as you get older, getting up and off of the toilet is very hard. And then we had one that was on my mom's side of the bed, because my dad was towards the door, so there wasn't a wall there as per se, but on the side of the bed where my mom was, we did put a railing there so that she could, when she wanted to get out of bed, it made it easier for her. And you know, in the end, she was you know, having to rely on the wheelchair, so she was able to maneuver and get herself out of bed. And there's a lot of independency in that, being able to get yourself out of bed. And you know, there was a time or two where she got stuck or whatever, and she would, you know, we'd hear her on the baby monitor and have to run over and help her. And you know, I mean, it wasn't, you know, an hour wait or anything like that. We were always right there with her. We always had the monitors on, so that worked well for them. And then also be thinking of your shower and your bathtub, because as you get older, especially if you have a bathtub, it's very hard to get your leg up over it. So we actually had to take when we bought the modular, that was one thing we did. We had them just put in a shower, so then that way we could roll in. We could get Dad in out of the shower and whatnot. That's one thing I wish we would have gotten a little bit bigger. If you know, it was hard in a modular, but I would have adjusted that so that we could actually wheel the wheelchair in there, because that is, you know, as they get older, and that is one thing that you need to be thinking of. And on the handrails, where do you need to install them? Like I said, the bathroom and the bedrooms are very important, but also be thinking of your walkways too. Make sure that you've got sturdy handrails there too. Doorways, do they need to be widened so the wheelchair can fit through them? We talked about that. Also with lighting, do you need to install better lighting? And then also the monitors and the detectors. That's one thing, you know, if you are rewiring your house, be thinking of that, and that's something that's very important. You can nowadays they actually have these pods, and I'll probably throw a link in here for that. But it's called a I think it's a parent modular or something like that. But anyway, it is all set up with the beams and everything. So if you fall, they will be triggered, and they'll send out a distress signal. There's speakers throughout the little building, so that you know, if you need help, they can always talk to you and listen to you. And then there's also a lot of cameras and monitors. And like I said, with our baby monitors, you know, the technology nowadays is awesome. It, you know, picked up for us. You know, we were obviously a couple hundred yards away, but we could still reach them and hear and see what was going on. And even at night, the infrared, like, you know, even though it was, you know, somewhat dark in their room, you know, you could still see any movement or anything going on, and also hear them. It's actually kind of cool because my dad grew up on a farm, and the big thing that they did is they would get around the radio because they didn't have TV, you know, in the early years, so they listened to a lot of radio. And at one point in the middle of the night, he started becoming a radio announcer. And it was just, I wish I had the capability to video it, and I should have thought of just putting it on speaker up to my phone and videoing that and recording that. But it was really, really fun to hear him. And I mean, he just went right into the mode of it, and just brought a lot of joy for me to listen to that in the middle of the night. So also the medical alert systems, our local little telephone had one. We had that one installed, and then like Vivint had one as well. The one with Vivint was really nice because it had arm ones, and then they had the necklaces, and then if you distress them, they would send out a call to us first. All of them, that's the way they did it. They would us being the first phone call, and then like I was, and then Dave was, and then I think we actually had one. I think there was 3 calls that they would call first, and if they couldn't reach anybody, then they would send out, you know, the ambulance, or, you know, whatever they needed to dispatch. Obviously, if it was a fire and, you know, they came on and said, you know, is there a fire or whatever, they would have called the fire department right away. But then, but that's how they do that. So those alarms, the security systems, medical alert systems are very good. You know, speaking from experience, we got several calls because if something happened, and the other side of that too, we got several calls because things didn't happen. When my dad, we didn't realize, you know, how bad he was getting, but he would play with the buttons, and that happens with Alzheimer's and dementia. They, you know, they want to tinker with everything, and so that did happen where he was tinkering with the bell and or the buttons, and so we did get a few calls, you know, even though we were right next door. So that was kind of fun. And the other thing with that, do some research of what systems are available in your area and the cost. You know, start looking at that now if that's something you want to do. And then the video and the monitoring systems. These are great because family can check in on you through technology and ensure that you're safe. And that was the thing too, even, you know, when mom and dad first came up here, they were still, you know, capable of kind of taking care of themselves. But with the Vivint and the cameras that they had set up, I could jump on my phone and make sure that they were okay. And even though I was in town working, but I still had the capability of checking on them, and that was kind of cool. Now, interesting, when we went to court, one of my brothers, that was a concern to him. Because we had security system that, like, people in China could jump on and, you know, see what mom and dad were doing. It was the weirdest thing. And the judge kind of looked at him and just kind of shrugged his head. I just thought that was odd, but had to throw that out there just so you can see the level of craziness that I went through. And then stairway lifts, if those are needed. I know we know several people that installed the, if your bedroom's upstairs, there is the stairway lifts that you can purchase. So, be thinking of that too if that's something that you need. With that, if you are making modifications and you don't want to be upstairs, then is a first floor bedroom or bathroom to accommodate when you no longer can use the stairs. So, that's one thing to be thinking ahead of too. If you are in a, 2-level home or more, is that something you want to do, is try to start, putting a basement or a bedroom down in the lower levels so that you've got it all at ground level there. So, additional living space for live-in assistant. You could pay them or in exchange, or do in exchange for them helping you. That's become a common thing, especially if you don't have family or around. There are a lot of people that will actually just move in with you and help you. There again, be careful, because you don't want to be taken advantage of. You don't want them to have power of attorney and lose a lot of things. But that is something that is common. A lot of people, I've heard a lot of great success stories. I mean, there's definitely some bad things with that, but there's also some good things with that too. We did hire a CNA. She actually worked at the nursing home, and so we knew her, and so we did have a CNA that worked about 40 hours with my mom and dad. In the end, she was there to help them and make sure that they were bathed and taken care of and got all their meds and everything, and that helped us out a lot. That gave us 40 less hours, because one thing when you're caring for somebody, and maybe this is even you getting prepared for your parents to come live with you, it's a lot of work, because it's 24/7. It's like having a child again. And it was nice to have those 40 hours off where we knew that they were taken care of. Mostly that happened during our week while we were working during the weekday, but still it worked out good, and we were really grateful for having that CNA. The other side, I have to just input there, when the CNA left, and it kind of got a little bit ugly at the end because of the things, how it went down with my siblings, and she was very upset about it. And but the thing with that, she confided in me after everything was said and done. And the cool thing is my mom brought her to Jesus. And that was just really exciting. The ladies, she said, I have to share with you. She goes, I've never prayed before, and I've never even knew what praying was, or what God was. She goes, but through your mom, she goes, she taught me how to pray. And so there's advantages to having those CNA and having those people in, and there's greatness, and I know that warmed my heart even more to hear that about my mom. She was an awesome lady, so good things came from it. Also with financial help, if you're going to stay in, check your local and state programs. There may be funding available to help pay for some of the home repairs. And a good place to start may be the area agency in aging, and see if funds from the Title III of the Older American Act. So this is in the paperwork here, so you can check that out. But that's a good place to start, and you might have some help doing some of these remodeling and refurbishing things to help you prepare yourself so that you can be in your home as long as possible. Rental residency, speak with your property owner and ask if they will assist with the cost of any of the renovations that you may make. Property owners are required to allow you to make reasonable revisions to accommodate your needs. Once again, the Area Agency on Aging can assist you with these matters. So if you do run into problems, if you are in a rental property, if you don't own a home and you want to stay there as long as possible, check with that agency, the Area Agency of Aging on Aging, and then also speak to your landlord about that too. Technology support. This area has grown by leaps and bounds. There are so many great devices out there that can help you now. The age-old saying, ask a teenager, they will get it hooked up for you. That's so true. If you have anything when you're trying to put monitors or any of the camera stuff together, or even if you're trying to get onto a cell phone, any of that, teenagers are pretty tech savvy nowadays, so and they can figure things out pretty quickly. So don't feel like you're or if you are struggling with that, reach out to someone that's younger, because they usually know how to fix it. I know I have a cell phone, and whenever it's not working, I usually hand it over and they fix it for me. So and some of the things that you want to look at to get are the camera and the video devices, telephone and telecommunication devices. I know that was one of the things that we had to kind of struggle with, because my grandmother had a hearing aid, and so they had this phone that had like a hearing aid attached to it, but it was the old dial-up phones. And nowadays a lot of these cordless phones are not very loud, and so even learning how to put the speaker on, because sometimes the speaker will be louder, but be thinking ahead, because phone communication is vital, especially if your children are not close by and you want to be able to talk to them. But that was one of the struggles that we ran into, was finding a phone. I think we actually got the last old handheld set phone for Mom and Dad from our local little and that may be even something that you want to just kind of hang on. If you see it at a rummage sale, buy it for a couple bucks and hook it up, and so you have it on file for yourself, because that's really important. That was probably one of the bigger struggles. My mom liked to talk on the phone, and she called people regularly and talked to my siblings and whatnot before everything kind of got ugly. So be thinking of what you can do for a telephone there as well. And then also the electrical sensors, we talked about that. They've got them now where you can hook them up, so if you fall or whatever, you can put those in place. And then also social media. Don't, I know right now you're watching this via the web, which is awesome, but be thinking of that, and understand nowadays with Skype and Facebook Lives and all the technology that you can do, you can stay connected a lot more than what you used to be. So make sure you rely and utilize the power of social media. So I hope that this has helped you so that you can be thinking ahead and how you can stay in your home. I think it's very important if that's what you want to do. And I cannot stress enough, make sure that you voice your opinion to your children or your loved ones, so that they know that that's something that you want. And then as you are making modifications, or if you're doing upgrades in your home, make sure that you can include this, and like I said, kind of look at the end result of what you want. And then that way, when this time comes, the transition is not so difficult, and you can be thinking ahead of it. So I offer myself again, as always. If you need anything, please reach out to me. I will be happy to help you. If there's anything, if you're at this point and you want help with the aging, forgot the name of it again, the area agency on aging, if you need that, if you need me to help with you, if you're struggling, if you can't find that, reach out to me and I'll be happy to help you with that, as well with anything else. So hopefully this is helpful, and we'll catch you on the next modular.